Hello everyone, and welcome to part 2 of my Nightwing illustration process. In this video, I'll be sharing my complete painting process as well as some post effects that will add the extra 10% to your illustrations. I'll walk you through each step of the painting process, from blocking in the base colors to adding details and highlights. To begin, I start by cropping the image to the desired aspect ratio as we discussed in the previous video. Since I want the final image to be in 4:5 ratio for Instagram, I select the crop tool by pressing C and choose ratio option. Then I input 4:5 and click confirm to apply the crop. Next, I adjust the resolution of the image by going to Image, Image Size. For optimal printing, I typically increase the width to around 4,000 to 5,000 pixels and set the resolution to 300 pixels per inch. It's important to note that increasing the resolution too much can result in decrease in image quality. However, since I'm currently working with only line art sketch and it won't be visible in the final illustration, I'm not overly concerned about this issue at this stage. After adjusting the resolution, my next step is to create a gradient layer above the background. This layer serves as a visual representation of how I envision the lighting setup for the illustration. However, I must mention that there was a recent update to the gradient tool in Photoshop, which was released just 2 days before I recorded this video. As a result, you may notice me struggling a bit to figure out the new functionalities. Once I'm satisfied with the gradient, I proceed to create a new layer between the line work and the background. This layer will serve as the base for blocking in the colors of my character. There are a few methods to achieve this, such as using the lasso tool to select the character before painting, or directly painting within the shapes while staying within the lines. Personally, I prefer the latter option. When filling in the shape, you can use any color you prefer since this layer acts as the base for our character. However, I opt for a medium dark gray shade as I intend for most of the character to have a darker appearance. After blocking in the colors for my character, I proceed to add more details to the illustration. Firstly, I create a new layer and apply a quick blue overlay to the background as I envision Nightwing in a nighttime sky setting. Next, I start separating the different elements of Nightwing by creating separate layers for his emblem, mask, hair, and skin. To achieve this, I utilize the base layer. By control-clicking on the base layer, I can create a selection that restricts painting only within the desired shape. This allows me to work on each element independently and maintain clean edges. Furthermore, I decide to adjust the base layer to make it darker and more bluish. Moving on, I begin to explore the background for the illustration. Considering the concept of Nightwing descending from the sky to the city, I start experimenting with different colors for the cityscape. In this case, I opt for an orange hue as it complements the blue tones that will be present in the overall illustration. Initially, I also entertained the idea of having the background elements create a vignette around Nightwing, but I later decided to revise this idea. During this phase, I quickly explore a concept for the electricity effect on Nightwing's weapons. Moving on to adding shadows. I create a new layer above my base layer and set it as a clipping mask. To create a clipping mask, you create a shape on one layer and place a layer above it. By holding Alt and clicking between the layers, you can ensure the top layer stays within the shape of the layer below. This allows for easier painting within the desired shape while benefiting from the use of multiple layers. Starting with the base color, I make it slightly darker to represent the shadows. I then proceed to paint quick shadows on Nightwing's suit, keeping in mind the forms and considering the direction of the light source. This helps add depth and dimension to the illustration. I apply the same process to the emblem shape by creating a clipping mask and adding shadows accordingly. At this stage, I decided to make a significant change to the background. Originally, I had envisioned a vignette effect around Nightwing. However, considering my goal of conveying Nightwing's sense of motion, I opted to modify the background accordingly. The new background now emphasizes the feeling of Nightwing being in motion, showcasing his dynamic movement through the cityscape. During the refinement stage, I focus on improving the overall look of the illustration. I carefully go over the black-blue base, paying attention to the shadows, midtones, and adding additional lighting effects. I experiment with incorporating some orangish light coming from below to add visual interest and depth to the scene. Additionally, I introduce rim lighting in certain areas around Nightwing, which helps to separate him from the background and create a more dynamic and three-dimensional appearance. Throughout this stage, I heavily rely on my reference images, constantly studying them for inspiration and capture the desired design elements. I primarily use the round brush with pen pressure enabled, as it provides versatility and allows for clean and controlled strokes. I also encourage embracing some randomness in your brush strokes, as it can generate unexpected and creative ideas. Overall, this stage involves a lot of experimentation and exploration. Moving on to the hair, the process is similar to working on the body. I start by adding colors that complement the overall color scheme, incorporating shades of blue and brown for the highlights. The goal is to create a sense of motion and flow, emphasizing Nightwing's dynamic movement. When working on the face, I first remove the mask to ensure it doesn't hinder the painting process. Beginning with the skin color, I increase the saturation slightly to add more vibrancy and depth to the initial flat tone. To introduce variation and create a more realistic appearance, I apply different colors to specific areas of the face. This technique involves adding a bluish tone to the chin, a reddish hue to the middle of the face, and a greenish shade to the forehead. This distribution of colors is a common approach to capturing the complexities and nuances of the facial tones, helping me discover new tonal variations. Next, I incorporate shadows to enhance contrast and define the facial features. Shadows are added to the neck, the sides of the face, over the eyes, and under the nose. Afterwards, I reintroduce the mask but with some modifications. I outline the mask using a dark blue color and then proceed to add highlights to enhance its appearance. Once I feel satisfied with the overall progress of the illustration, I take a moment to save the project as a new file. This allows me to create a separate version that serves as a backup, providing reassurance in case I regret any further steps. After saving the project, I proceed to merge the individual layers with their respective shapes. One layer for Nightwing, one for his weapons, and one for the background. By doing so, it becomes more convenient and efficient to manipulate and make adjustments to the three elements. Now that everything has been merged, I duplicate the layer I want to work on and lock its pixels. This action is similar to using a clipping mask, as it restricts my painting to only within the shape, ensuring that I do not go beyond its boundaries. By locking the pixels, I can focus on rendering and making further adjustments within the shape. During this stage, I delve into exploring the electricity effect. To create the effect, I use a large brush with a light blue color. Once I establish the overall motion of the electricity, I use a round razor brush to carve out some interesting shapes. I aim for a stylized look with this effect. To enhance the visual impact, I apply a hue saturation adjustment to make the color of the electricity brighter and more vibrant. This adjustment helps to bring out the intensity of the effect and adding an extra dynamic element to the overall composition. At this point, I noticed that Nightwing's weapons appear a bit off, so I create two rectangles with the same color to ensure a sharp and defined shape for the weapons. Next, I begin adding lighting and shading to the weapons. Since the weapons are in a close proximity to the electricity effect, I believe that some of the vibrant colors from the electricity should be reflected onto the weapons. At this stage, as the illustration nears completion, I take the opportunity to clean up Nightwing's shape. I achieve this by carefully using an eraser tool to go around the edges of the shape, ensuring crisp and clean lines. This step helps to refine the overall appearance. Next, I proceed to make further adjustments to the background. I felt that it appeared a bit too bright behind Nightwing's face, so I used the level adjustments to explore different values and find the right balance. Returning to Nightwing, I add additional details to enhance the overall look. To fine-tune the appearance of Nightwing, I utilize the curve adjustments to experiment with different values and tones within the character's shape. This helps to achieve the desired lighting and contrast. In order to create a sense of depth and separation between Nightwing and the background, I apply a blur effect to the background. This not only aids in emphasizing Nightwing as the focal point, but also simulates the bokeh effect typically seen in photography. Now, to further emphasize that he is in motion, I got the idea to create some motion lines behind his body. I do this by creating a layer below his shape, and I copy the colors from the areas where I want the lines to be. I then use a splatter brush to create some traditional paint effect. I find that this is perfect for lighter areas and energy effects. I put the splatter down somewhat randomly, and afterwards I go in and erase from the areas where I do not like it. Note that this is the only custom brush that I use for this illustration. Now that I'm happy with the illustration, it's time for the final effects. I do this for almost all of my illustrations. First, I merge everything onto a new layer. You can do this by pressing Ctrl, Shift, Alt, E. This will create a new layer with all your current visible layers merged. I then duplicate that layer and choose a soft round brush and set the brush blend mode to color dodge and choose a medium dark blue color. Then I start to paint over the areas that should have extra light. Once done, I lower the opacity of the layer to about 30 to 50%, depending on what I like. I then press Ctrl Shift Alt E to merge those two layers onto a new layer. I then duplicate that layer and set it to soft light blend mode. Then I go to Filter, Other, High Pass. I set the radius to about 3 or 4. I have found that 6 to 8 is perfect. What this does is to sharpen your image a bit, and if you want to print the illustration, it ensures crisp quality. I then merge those two layers again, and now I want to add some noise/grain to my image. I do this by going to Filter, Camera Raw, and then I go down to Effects and add Grain. And there you have it. This was my quick overview of my entire painting process. I hope you found it useful. If you want me to dive deeper into some of the processes, be sure to leave a comment below. You can see the final image on my Instagram account, linked below. Also, I'll be uploading an uncut time-lapse of both the sketching and painting process, so be sure you are subscribed for that. Anyways, thank you for watching and have a fantastic day.